On February 11th, 1990, Buster Douglas pulled off perhaps the upset of the century when he knocked out Mike Tyson in the 10th round at the Tokyo Dome in Japan. Now, not only did Buster Douglas hand Mike Tyson his first loss, but he was the first one to stop Mike Tyson. At that time, Mike was 37-0 with 32 knockouts. Buster Douglas was rated number 3 by the WBC and had a record of 29-4-1. Now, he earned that number 3 spot by beating Oliver McCall and Trevor Berbick in his previous 2 fights. So I think the odds were set at 42-1, not so much because folks thought that Buster Douglas was so bad. It's just that at that point, this is the era when Mike Tyson was knocking all his opponents out within 3 rounds. And this is when everyone was complaining about buying the Mike Tyson pay-per-view just because the fight was over so quickly. You feel like you didn't get your money's worth because it was like 180 seconds maybe of action. Now, Tyson's promoter at that time was, of course, Don King, and this predates the sort of big falling out they had later on. And this Tyson Douglas was co-promoted with the biggest promoter in Japan, TYSON Promotions, which is headed by Akihiko Honda, who remains one of the biggest boxing promoters in Japan right till this day. Now, a key part of the narrative that was put out, and which was true, is that Buster Douglas's mom had tragically passed away approximately 3 weeks prior to the fight. And unfortunately for Buster, he couldn't break camp to go see his mom or to attend the service. So, of course, Buster Douglas had all that sort of pent-up emotion leading into the fight. But also important to note is that Tyson had been out of the ring for over 200 days, and so this was kind of billed as, Tyson's return, the return of Mike Tyson. And again, so this also predates his jail stint, so we're not talking about that return, which happened later on. I think a second key point for Tyson in this fight is this is the first time he's going into the ring without Kevin Rooney. Now, Kevin Rooney was one of Cus D'Amato's assistants, along with Teddy Atlas. And Kevin Rooney is the gentleman you'll see in a lot of old video footage of Mike Tyson working the mitts where he's slipping and then taking steps to cut corners and create an angle to land body shots. Kevin was just drilling that sort of peekaboo defense and slipping the punches and getting in and then creating angles over and over with Mike. Now, of course, just to remind everybody, this is way back when there was absolutely no social media, and this fight was put on by HBO. There was also no sort of reality TV hadn't taken off, so there was really the only news that got put out at that time was news that the corporate structure wants people to know about. So, for example, if a fighter sustains a cut like Merab just did, you can't just post something on your social media and then, of course, everybody knows you got cut in practice. I mean, that type of news would never get out back in the 90s, simply because corporate structure had a stranglehold on basically media coverage as far as boxing goes. Now, I'm going to break down this fight simply based on the fight footage and what can be observed, during the corner work. I absolutely ignore all sort of any documentaries about this, any interviews sort of looking back in the rear view mirror. I just want to try to look at this as a technical, tactical breakdown. So stepping into the ring, according to the tale of the tape, as sort of usual with Mike Tyson, he's at a size disadvantage as a heavyweight. Mike stepped in the ring at about 220 pounds. Douglas was about 230 pounds. But the significance was that Buster Douglas had about a 5-inch height advantage and about a foot in other words, 12 inches of reach advantage, which is going to turn out to play a significant factor in how this fight played out. Now, knowing the outcome already, I did kind of take a close look at how both men appeared when they entered the ring. Buster Douglas was certainly the more physically active, kind of constantly bouncing around and moving about in the ring, and Mike kind of looked like his typical sullen self when he entered the ring. And I tried to look for any sign of whether or not Mike had not warmed up, but by the time the camera kind of zoomed in on him, he did look like he had a bit of a glint on his skin, meaning he wasn't like, neither fighter was like dripping sweat, but they both looked like they had a little bit of perspiration on them, and that warmth could also have been due to the literally the bright lights, because back in the day in the 90s they didn't use LED lights. They used lights that really did give off a lot of heat. Nevertheless, from the opening bell, I think everything that was going to play out was shown to us almost within the first round. Buster Douglas was certainly the more had the more active feet, in terms of he was just constantly bouncing on his feet, on the balls of his feet, moving around, making Buster Douglas would make these jittery feint motions with his upper body and his head, and then actual feints to land his very stiff, fast, hard jab from the outside. Buster Douglas would follow up his stiff jab, occasionally drop in a right hand or maybe a right uppercut, but then he'd also make very good use of his footwork and move around laterally and circle. Now, what was notable in its absence was a lot of upper body movement from Mike Tyson. He did adopt that, of course, his signature peekaboo defense style, with both fists held up by the base of his chin, but he wasn't doing that really rapid side-to-side torso motion that we were so used to seeing from him. Tyson was not using his feet well to set up angles and close distance and then step off to the side to get a body shot. What Tyson was doing was he was using that leap-in left hook that he's kind of also famous for. Now, once they were in close quarters, there was an awful lot of clinching, and that was another theme that was just going to continue throughout this entire fight. It wasn't always Douglas who initiated the clinch either. A lot of times it was really 50-50. It was Tyson would also clinch, taking either man would take an overhook or an underhook and try to continue punching with their free hand. Now, it was probably more to Douglas's advantage to tie Mike up on the inside like that, because who wants to get hit to the body by Mike Tyson? But what Mike failed to do was to create that angle that he's so famous for by stepping off to his 1 or 2 o'clock or to his 10 o'clock to avoid getting clinched and to be able to fire a body shot straight up the center line. In the early rounds, there was some great corner work by Buster Douglas's corner. They're telling him stay long, which meaning stay way on the outside and fire your jab. And then in the corner, they insisted, start with a jab, work in your short right hand, which is great advice because in the first round, Buster kind of overshot his right hand a little bit. That allows Mike Tyson to weave under it. But the short right is a better strategy, especially when somebody's may try to weave under. And then they're telling him, hey, then follow up to 2-3 punches. Great advice again, because even if he misses with that right hand, there's still two or three chances to hit if he follows up. By contrast, Tyson's corner they're Captain Obvious throughout the whole fight. They tell him something like, get on the inside. You got to get on the inside. All right, you need to tell your fighter specifically what you want him to do. Do you want him to take faster steps? Do you want him to create an angle off to the right, off to the left? Do you want him to bob and weave? I mean, be specific in terms of the actual techniques. In the next few rounds, continued to be much of the same. Douglas did exactly what his corner asked for. He stuck to the jab. He did a lot of that sort of jittery, rhythmic motion to disguise, when he was going to throw the jab. And then he started finding a home for his right hand. Now, the commentators called it a lead right hand, but really it's like if you throw a jab and then you pause and then you throw a right hand, I'm not so sure that you want to call the lead hand. I mean, I'm not going to get bogged down in semantics with you, but the point is he did set up the right hand with his left jab. And Douglas, again, to his credit, listening to his corner, he did follow up with those other 2-3 punches, even if he missed, which was also critical to this, a critical aspect to this fight. Now, Tyson was kind of resorting to what we know him to be able to do, which is slip to his left and look to load up on that nasty left liver shot. But still, we didn't see those multiple slips from him to both left side and right side to try to disguise what he was about to set up. And he was not using his footwork effectively to create angles to get inside. And again, even in these early rounds, Buster Douglas is starting to find a home for his straight right hand, which was a key weapon in this fight. Now, more bad advice after the third round from Tyson's corner, telling him, "Oh, you're too flat-footed. Don't be so cautious with your punches." Okay, again, sign of very bad corner work, because you never want to tell an athlete what they're doing wrong or what you don't want them to do. Instead, in that limited time you have, and the limited amount of comprehension that a fighter has when they're sitting on the stool, you have to tell them specific techniques that you want them to execute as soon as they get off the stool. Whether it's specific punches, or you want to tell them, hey, start bouncing on the balls of your feet, whatever it is, be really specific about what you want them to do. I mean, I would have preferred if they would have said something like, hey, feint to the head, jab to the body, and then come in with your overhand right. In any case, rounds 4 and 5 were pretty much, again, a continuation where Buster Douglas' straight right hand starting to cause some swelling on Mike Tyson's left eye. And Mike is still sort of doing what he's kind of pre-programmed to do with that leaping in left hook, and still not doing that side-to-side slip motion. And at this point, Douglas is starting to land punches not only from the outside, but at middle distance as Mike is trying to close the distance, because he's just too stationary in a sense that he's coming almost straight in without doing any kind of feinting in terms of which way he's going to bob or slip. So Douglas is able to now pick him off at 2 distances, outside and middle distance. What we're also not seeing from Mike Tyson is use of those enormous thighs that he has. I mean, he's able to use his legs like springs and really level change, and then not only just leap in, but also pendulum step to like quickly create an angle in one like fraction of a second. But we didn't get to see any of that during this fight, and certainly not in that round. Now, after that round, back in the corner, this is the most telling evidence that Mike Tyson's corner was absolutely incompetent, because they didn't have the proper equipment to bring down swelling in the corner. So Mike Tyson's cornerman, I'm not sure of what his name is. He looks to be about in the same age range as Mike, so maybe just a little bit older, so like late 20s, 30s. In any case, he didn't have that end swell, that piece of metal that a cut man or a trainer will use to press on a swollen eyebrow. Instead, what this clown has is a blown up glove, like a rubber glove. He blew air into it, and I assume he put ice in there. So it's like absolutely crazy thing to do, because it would have been better not to blow it up like a balloon. Just put some ice in the glove and then press that against the swelling so you can actually create some pressure. But in any case, that was his idea of what he should be doing to treat the swelling on Mike's eye. But I'm sort of dwelling on that to say, well, that is just such a sign of absolute incompetence that if that's how you act in the corner of a world champion, I can't imagine how you acted in the training camp. And again, the corner people in Tyson's corner, not only do they not help bring the swelling down, but they give him these pearls of wisdom. You gotta hit the body when you get to the inside. It's like, again, thank you, Captain Obvious. We could pretty much say that to any fighter who's shorter than their opponent. I've heard that plenty of times. So that's kind of like, when you can give advice without even having to watch the fight, then it's not advice. That's just a general principle that the shorter fighter always knows is true. In any case, over the next couple rounds, it looked like Mike tried to take a few more risks and kind of threw sort of riskier, harder shots from the outside. I wouldn't quite call them Hail Mary shots, but they were getting close to that. And then on the inside, Mike actually wound up landing a couple of marginal low blows, which didn't get called by the ref. So I guess that was his response to hitting the body while he's on the inside. A really telling sign was how Mike looked in terms of body language between rounds 7 and 8. He's sitting on a stool, his head is down, and again, bad corner work, because if a cornerman should never let their fighter put their head down like that. Instead, if they see that about to happen, they go, hey, no, look at me, and they force the fighter to look up, look at them in their eyes, and then listen to what they have to say. Now, 8th round was a really dramatic round, because again, Mike pretty much was giving the round away due to just simply not having enough output. It was like he was allowing Buster Douglas to win by default. However, ironically, this turned out almost to be Mike Tyson's favor, because Douglas was able to drive Tyson back to the ropes a couple times, and so Mike has his back actually against the ropes. Usually it's the other way around. Tyson was always the fighter that drove his opponent's back. But in this case, right off the ropes, after a second exchange and after a break in the action, Mike throws this hellacious right uppercut from the sub basement that catches Douglas straight up underneath the chin, sends him straight back, and he lands flat on his back, outstretched on the canvas. Now, it was later argued that Buster Douglas was given a long count, but the thing is, there was only 5 seconds left in the round. I timed it according to the footage, which could be edited, right? So at most, there may have been a second or two extra given to Douglas to get up. But regardless, he did make it to his feet, and then there's like literally just 5 seconds, and then the bell rings, so now he has a minute to recover. Now in the 9th round, Tyson comes out hard right off the bell, and that's absolutely the right tactic to take when you just dropped your opponent. Let's try to get him out of here. But to his credit, Douglas also comes back super hard, which is just evidence that he put in a ton of hard work in training camp. He put in a ton of hard rounds sparring, and he definitely did his road work, because you have to be in absolutely terrific conditioning to get dropped and then be able to come back hard the following round. Now, with 1 minute left in the 9th, Buster Douglas really hurts Tyson pretty badly. In fact, he snaps Tyson's head back multiple times, sometimes with a jab, sometimes with an uppercut. And then he just starts unloading these very sort of loopy hooks. And this is kind of a sign of things to come. And again, so then in the 10th round, again, Tyson comes out super hard. Again, it's probably the right tactic. But Buster Douglas manages to catch him with the right uppercut, and then finishes him off with a series of hooks, both left and right, and Mike Tyson gets dropped. There's that famous little, probably meme or photograph of him he gets on all fours and is crawling around, trying to grab his mouthpiece to put back in his mouth. And Tyson's just not able to beat the count. And that, lo and behold, Buster Douglas pulls off 42-1 underdog upset. Now, was that a short count? Some people might argue. I would argue that even if Tyson did beat the count, he was just in for more of the same as soon as the action would have resumed. I suspect that given the incompetence shown during the fight by his corner, they just did not run a proper camp, and Mike stepped into that ring ill-prepared. Now, I'm sure there's other stories of what he was up to while he was supposed to be in camp, but I mean, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to get into all of that. But just based on what he showed in the ring, it was clear that he just wasn't in his sort of A+ form, or even his A form. And it's clear to me that the absence of Kevin Rooney really did make a difference. Because if these guys are dumb enough not to have an end swell in their bucket, then they don't know how to do mitts like Kevin Rooney, and they don't know how to run a proper training camp and what it takes to get a heavyweight fighter who's champion of the world, and a personality like Mike Tyson, what it takes sort of psychologically to get him to do what he needs to do to step in the ring and prevail. So did you see Douglas Tyson live? If so, tell me what you remember about that. What was that experience like, seeing Mike Tyson get not only lose, but lose by KO? And if you just have watched the fight on video, what did you think of the fight? Do you think Douglas beating Tyson was the upset of the century or the millennium? Tell me what you think is the greatest heavyweight upset of all time. I look forward to reading your comments.